Hello, everybody. Let's check technology here. I think we're good.
Awesome.
Okay, welcome. Fit for Life community, or if you're watching us later on replay, hello, we have a very special guest today. I'm excited to introduce to you Sabrina Carter. I know a lot of you in this community have expressed that you struggle with how to make your health a priority time-wise and from a practical sense, and having the mindset of you are worth making a priority and all of that. So this is one of the things in Sabrina's wheelhouse. So we wanted to bring her in today to share her wisdom and really encourage you. So if you're watching with us live, please say hello, tell us where you're watching from. And if not, if you're on the replay, just give us a hashtag replay. And we'd love to hear your takeaways and your questions as we go through this chat today. So Sabrina, thanks so much for hopping on.
Thanks, Kelsey. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you, just so we can get to know you before we kind of hop into soak up your wisdom today.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm Sabrina Carter. I'm also a physician assistant for those of you that have been following Kelsey. That's, one commonality that we have. And I've been in the health and wellness space for many years. I'm currently working with ambitious women to really help them elevate their mindset and lifestyle to achieve optimal health and weight loss and energy, and just really create a lifestyle that is sustainable for those goals. And as you mentioned, I find, that so many people struggle with that obstacle of time. So, I used to be a personal trainer, and then even as a PA, and then, doing just one-on-one health coaching, I find that that's probably like one of the top struggles that people have. And so I really try to incorporate that in my, coaching and education for clients so that they can get great results, and not only with health, but with so many other factors. So yeah, this is like a personal passion of mine. And I also have a podcast called My Prevention RX. Preventative health is really something that I also just love talking about. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So Sabrina has an awesome podcast. You guys should go check her out. And we'll talk more about that at the end. But she's a PA, and she's also a healthy lifestyle coach, and she's rocking this podcast. So she will share more about connecting later. So Sabrina, can you tell us kind of where your passion specifically for time management began then?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we all know, time is limited, right? Like tomorrow is promised to no one. I have had a fair amount of death in my family, which always makes us really recognize like the value of time, and that statement that like we can always make more money, but time is such a precious commodity, and like this very unique aspect of life that like impacts everything, right? Our relationships, our finances, our productivity, our sleep, our health. And so I have over the years just I've always been like a very disciplined person, but as our plates become more and more full, it is such a like critical thing to consider, like, how can I master that obstacle that so many people have of time? And again, like in the health and wellness space, that, as I mentioned, is like one of the top 3 probably obstacles that most clients report, is like, they're just so busy. How do I find time to do it? And so that has become like a focus of really being able to educate women about the value of time, and like being able to like have time on our side so that we can really thrive and enjoy our lives and our relationships, and not like get to the end of the day feeling like we didn't get things done, and then we can't like enjoy our family and things of that nature. So that's kind of how I, became really passionate about helping people with time management.
Yeah. And I love that so much of what you share to your audience too is enjoying your time and, traveling and exploring and all that. And because you have made your health such a priority, you get to do that well. So excited to hear more. Okay. So what do you hear a lot of women express when it comes to their struggle with time and making their
Yeah, so certainly the top one is just like being so busy, right? So a lot of, women that either work full-time jobs or have a business, have a spouse, a house, kids, animals, maybe hobbies that they enjoy doing. They really have this belief in their mind that they don't have time to improve their health, and whatever that looks like to them, whether it's exercise or healthy eating or getting better sleep. That's usually the first one, is like, I'm just so busy, like I don't know how to fit it in. And then another one I would say is not having enough energy, right? So time and energy go pretty like hand in hand with each other, where it's usually one of those two concerns, where even if she does maybe have a few extra minutes in the evening when her kids go to bed, she's like so tired that she can't imagine like meal prepping for the next day, or, doing anything other than sleeping, which is really valuable, right? Like I don't ever want to have people think that sleep is not valuable, because it certainly is. But yeah, I would say energy would be number two. And then the other thing would just be lack of motivation or discipline, in terms of, being able to execute their plans, maybe when they do have a little extra time, is like they just don't have the motivation or discipline to be able to do that. So I think that those are probably like the top few things that people report in terms of not being able to, make their health a priority.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you mentioned the energy management. I was just on a call earlier today and they were talking about this exact thing. Like you can have all the time management you want, but if you don't have energy management, then it's kind of obsolete, right?
Yeah, it's very true. So it's like if you have all the energy but you have no time, then it's a problem. If you have all the time but no energy, it's a problem. So yeah, it is like really valuable to be able to manage both of those well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you're working with women on their struggle with time and energy management, what are the biggest mindset shifts that need to happen so that they can start prioritizing their health and have that motivation and discipline?
Yeah. So yeah, mindset is a big one, right? Like, as I mentioned at the beginning, if we believe that we don't have time, this is something that like our mind really makes us believe. Like a lot of women come and they're just committed to their reality that they don't have time to do X, Y, Z. So mindset is a really important factor of the things that I work with my clients. And I would say number one, and like fairly simple, is just starting with recognizing that it doesn't actually take a ton of time to start making some small habits or like small sustainable changes to your lifestyle, right? So you don't have to spend an hour and a half in the gym to be healthier and lose weight and get results. You don't have to spend 2 hours in the kitchen every night, cooking a meal from prep to finish and do that every single day. There's so many things that people can do, like drink more water and, use glass instead of plastic, or, just finding healthier snacks, maybe eating more raw food so you're not having to cook, figuring out some awesome, home workouts that you can do in 30 minutes. So I think that's number one. That is like so simple that so many people think that it's this huge time commitment to be able to improve their health. So that's what I would say. Number one, just recognizing that it doesn't actually have to be a big time suck. And if you learn how to like strategize it right, it really can just be similar to like how you're spending your day, right? So like you're preparing meals anyways, and then just learning how to do it in a healthier manner. Number two would be taking responsibility for your time. So this is another thing that I really try to encourage my women to consider, is if we blame time for everything, then we're like a victim, right? We have no control over time. And we're just saying, oh, it's time's fault that I can't get X, Y, Z done. When the reality is that what I try to help them refocus is like, what that really means is that it's not a priority, right? Because we make time for things that are a priority. So that's kind of number one with that responsibility factor. And then another thing, a quote that I really like to share or remind myself of and share with my clients, is where we don't take responsibility, we have no power to change. So if we don't take responsibility for our time, we will continue to be that victim of like, I don't know where my time goes. I just have no control and I have no time. So that would be number two, is being responsible for your time. And then number three, most importantly, and I know that you do a lot of this work with your clients, but is really that belief that you're worthy of making yourself and your health a priority, right? Because, all the other things won't actually like set in and become habits until you really embody the reality that like your body is a temple. And for the Holy Spirit, I know that most of your clients are believers, and this is such a critical piece for us to understand, that it's not selfish to prioritize your health. And in fact, you can represent God and yourself better when you're energized and well-nourished and, well rested and fed and really taking care of yourself. So that's probably the number one most important factor. But yeah, that belief of making yourself a priority is certainly a critical aspect.
Yeah, that's so good. I love how you phrase that about making it our responsibility. Because we do all sorts of things to waste time every day, right? And maybe you'll talk more about that. But I think if we're being honest with ourselves, we actually have more time than we think. It's just those distractions, right, that are keeping us focused.
Absolutely.
So what about practical tools? Can you share maybe 3 tools that you use just practically to help your clients manage their time and energy better?
Yeah. Yeah. So I love practical strategies, right? I mean, theory is all good, but then it's like, okay, how can I actually make these changes? And so I think going back to what I had mentioned before is like learning these small habits are so valuable, like trying not to focus on everything that needs to be changed at once, but really just considering like, how much water am I drinking? Am I eating healthy snacks? Like how much am I sleeping? So really focusing on these small things. And then a couple of practical tools would be setting reminders and realistic time blocks for your schedule. So maybe like I use a Google Calendar, and it gives me a reminder like 10 minutes before I have a task to do. And so if I'm transitioning from tasks, that's like a good cue to complete whatever I'm doing and get ready for the next thing. Or, if I have a call or something else, that I have a reminder before the time is like set to start. And then to be realistic in terms of your time. So if this is a new task you've never done, maybe give yourself a little bit more time than you think. Or if it's a task, like, for example, like doing your taxes, right? Like maybe you don't want to sit for 4 hours on a Saturday and like figure out all your tax stuff. So maybe you're going to give yourself a couple of time blocks throughout the week when you can work on it so that you don't end up getting distracted in the middle of your task. So that's one thing, the reminders and realistic time blocks, which again, like if you have children or you have a spouse or you work from home, you have animals, like you have to be realistic that like you might get a phone call from your spouse or you might have to take your dog for a walk. And so trying not to create a schedule that's so tight that it doesn't give you any flexibility, I think is really important. And then number 2 is like when you chart out your priorities, figure out like how you can do the most important things first. And sometimes like your day might not allot you the time in the morning to work out, but that's one of the reasons why I exercise in the morning. And I think most people do, because it's like, if we wait until later in the day, it's likely not going to get done. So really prioritizing the things that like absolutely have to be done today and trying to get those main things or the things you really don't want to do, right? So like you really don't want to call your insurance and figure out the bill for this, or you really like don't want to fold the laundry. Like once you can get these, and that kind of leads into my next thing, like energy leaks. But once you can get these priorities, like this is what has to be done today, completed, it kind of gives you the motivation to keep going with the other tasks that have to be done. But if you have this priority that like, okay, this thing has to be figured out today, and you either wait all day to do it, or maybe it doesn't get done that day, it really impacts your self-confidence. And I think just that motivation to like keep going in the direction of, accomplishing your goals. So I think prioritizing things is really important. And then the next one would be getting rid of distractions. And so one of the things that I include there is like energy leaks. So for example, maybe you have like a stack of papers on your desk that like you really need to go through and probably throw most of them away, but they've just been sitting there maybe for a few weeks. Or you have, a pile of laundry on the couch, or you have maybe a messy desk, or maybe, your counter in your bathroom is really disorganized, and it kind of drains your energy whenever you look at it. You're like, I really need to do that, but I'm just going to close the door today. Something semi-simple like that, again, can be really distracting. So for me, I like to have my desk very clean. And if you're someone who also like sits down to get some work done, and then you're like, oh, I need to like clean the window, or I need to, like put the dishes away, like get those things done initially so that you can sit down and not be distracted. Maybe you put your phone on airplane mode. put your dog in the other room, like whatever distractions are drawing your attention, social media or TV. It's really important to recognize that these are all draining your energy throughout the day. And then you might notice like, gosh, I've been sitting here for 2 hours and I could have gotten this task done in 15 minutes, but I'm like distracted by all these other things. And then the final one I would say is to celebrate your wins, right? So like when we can really embody how good it feels, like I am someone who's just like a productivity fanatic, maybe to a fault. I just love the feeling of like getting things accomplished. But I think if we can celebrate even the smallest wins where you have your list of things that have to be done, and it just feels so good to look and be like, wow, like I got rid of those papers, or like I folded the laundry and now the couch is, clean. I think that if we can celebrate those small things and really recognize how good that feels, it can help us to, again, continue the pattern of like structuring our day in such a way that we can, manage our time well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you called them, energy leaks. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's such a good, like, I love that you made it into a phrase, because I feel that all the time, right? When there are things that are sucking my energy, but I can't figure out why sometimes. So the physical environment is really important. And I love too that you mentioned like having joy and celebration, because it like elevates your energy to be able to keep going too. So it's awesome how you tie those together. Really
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah. And these are things that I've experienced myself. We have an extra room here and sometimes things just get put there for later and it's like, no one goes in there. And so, but you walk by and I'm like, oh yeah, those clothes, or like, oh, that box, and it's like something that might even only take you 5 minutes, but like when it's done, you're like, oh, like that just, it feels good, and you're not having to worry about it. So yeah, I have found just for my own, personal things, and that I hear from so many other clients, like, wow, it just feels really nice to have an organized desk or, have these different things in place and then not have those drained on your energy.
Yeah, for sure. Even having like a semi-organized fridge with like food cut up, right? Makes you want to eat it more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about what you do with your clients and the transformation that you take them through to really master their time and energy. And tell us about your program.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a great question because I think I never really thought about like the actual process. It's just kind of something that like happens as we talk about mastering time, but I really enjoyed sitting down and kind of tracking out like, what does this actually look like? And, some takeaways for the listeners to be able to say like, okay, these are some strategies maybe that I can do on my own to figure out how to be better with my time management. So number one, and we can kind of relate this in terms of tracking minutes for your days. That's really number one, is the assessment aspect. And so similar when you're trying to improve your health, lose weight, be on a financial plan and, save more money, like you have to know where you're at and you have to know how many calories you're eating, or just in general, like what foods am I eating? How much money am I spending? Same rule applies here with actually tracking your minutes. I usually say for 5 days. And it's a little of a cumbersome task at first because you might like forget that you're supposed to be tracking your time and 2 hours have passed and you're like, oh gosh, like I forgot to write it down. But if you can, again, like maybe set a reminder once an hour or something to just jot down, like from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed, what are you doing with your time? Like, how long does it take you to do your morning routine? How long does it take you to cook your breakfast? How long does it take you to drive your kids to school? How long does it take you to commute to work? Whatever it is that you're doing. So that's number one, right? Because if we don't have a fair assessment, we can't make improvements. And it's also a great awareness aspect, right? So again, as in any area, we're like, gosh, I didn't realize that I was eating, 6 cookies every night, or gosh, I didn't realize I was spending $5 at Starbucks every day. So that's number one. And then number two, again, is that responsibility factor. So really helping clients to recognize, like, let's stop blaming time. Let's decide that like making my health is a priority. And I'm going to take responsibility for the way that I spend my time, which also looks like including healthy boundaries. And so that's, a little bit more of maybe like an abstract idea. But if you don't have healthy boundaries, no matter how great your schedule is, no matter how great your time blocks are, if you don't know when to say no, all of that stuff is going to be irrelevant. And so that is a really important factor for clients to really grasp is, again, like, your time is worthy. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say not now. You don't have to give every aspect of your life away in an effort to, help people. So that's really number two, the responsibility factor and the healthy boundaries. And then once those are in place, then we start to talk about priorities. So what are the absolute, like, must-have things in your day-to-day life, maybe like over a time span of a week? Like what has to be done, right? Like, your family has to eat, you have to work, you have to sleep. Like, what are those things that have to be done? And then tracking out how much time does that take? And then looking at, like, what are the nice to haves? And this is where everybody can kind of choose their thing, right? Like, for me, priority is exercising and healthy eating. But for some people, that would start out as a nice to have. Like, if I had time, I will do those things. So tracking out some of those factors, and then also looking at, like, what is a waste of time, or what do you want to stop spending your time doing? And whether that is cleaning your house or scrolling on social media or watching TV, or I don't know, whatever it is. For people to actually have categories for what these things look like, so they can say, like, okay, these are the things I have to do. These are the things I thought I had to do, but I don't really have to do these. So how can we strategize a way for you to either do those things less or not do them at all? Like, that's where, the client has to choose what is, like, what they want to keep. And then that leads to the next step, which is asking for or hiring help. And so I know not everyone maybe financially has the opportunity to, like, hire a maid or a chef or whatever, someone to help you with some task that's taking up a lot of your time. But that is another potential strategy for people to be able to recognize, like, or maybe you ask, the neighbor, their kids go to school with your kids, like, can we carpool? So you can drive them one day, I'll drive them another day. There's so many things that we can get help with from our family, our spouse, our friends. And so we just have to learn how to ask. Or if we're in a position to be able to hire someone to come in and clean your house once a week, hire someone to wash your car, hire someone to prep your food, maybe, order from Instacart instead of going to the grocery store. So this is where we're trading time for money. But if you do have that luxury, I think that's another great consideration to add some more time back to your day. And then the last thing, obviously, is planning accordingly, right? So once you have all these things structured out, like, how you're spending your time, you're responsible now, you've decided making your health as a priority, you're asking for help for things that maybe you don't have to do, or things that like, you need assistance with in order to have them done. And then you're planning your day. And then once that's done, it kind of leads back to number one, like reassessment, being responsible, prioritizing, and so forth. And the process usually takes a little bit of time, right? Because at first, like, we're all motivated and excited and like, yeah, I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m. and, like, do all these things. And I don't even encourage, my clients to do that. I think you have to be realistic with what time you're gonna wake up and what time you're gonna go to bed. Sleep is foundational principle for health, for sure, 7 to 8 hours. So I never encourage my clients to sacrifice sleep trying to get things completed. In fact, if anything, I do the opposite, where I really try to encourage them to consider, like, hey, if you got 1 more hour of sleep, like, imagine how much more energy you might have. And then maybe you can be more efficient in the time that you have, instead of stealing an hour of sleep to try to, like, get this one thing done. Yeah. So that's kind of the process that I go through.
I love that. A lot of the women in this community struggle with the boundaries piece, and even, like, boundaries with their own family and their kids and their husband. And I love that you walk them through essentially, like, a detailed process of giving them permission. Like, no, like, you can make yourself a priority. I'm going to show you how. We're going to walk through the details of that, because it can seem so overwhelming with, how do I even start to make that transition? So it's like a mix of, I'm going to walk you through this step by step, but also give you permission that it's okay. Like,
And then once they do it, you probably see, like, once they start doing it, they're like, oh, okay, like, this is good. And, I think respect increases. And then maybe if you're like, your friend calls when you're about to work out and you're like, hey, like, I'm about to do my workout. I'm, like, committed to doing my workout, I'll call you back after. And then, like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I should be like that, or they'll support you or, like, encourage you, So I think at the beginning it is hard, because people feel like, oh gosh, like, boundaries, like, everyone's going to hate me and I'm not gonna have any friends. But the reality is that when we really can implement those boundaries, I think it creates, like, such a better life in general, and, you know, extra support and things like that. So yeah, it's a really important factor.
Yeah, for sure. So, Sabrina, how can our community find you and connect with you? Tell us a little bit more about your podcast and how they can find you on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast is My Prevention RX. And for those of you listening, the next episode is actually with Kelsey and I talking about, you know, her program and her coaching and her community and all. So that'll be up hopefully in the next few days. So that's My Prevention RX. It can be found on pretty much any podcast platform. And then the other things I currently have a very small, intimate Facebook group. And I do most of my posts and content on Instagram. And so my personal Instagram page is Mrs. Sabrina Carter. And then there's also one for the podcast, which is My Prevention RX. So that's usually where I spend most of my time. And yeah, I'm currently, you know, doing one-on-one coaching is a lot of the work that I do. And just, you know, working people kind of through these steps and really just helping women like create new habits and, you know, optimize their time and have more energy and things like that. So yeah, those are the places that you can find more information about me and what I'm doing.
Awesome. We'll make sure to drop the links in the comments below. And I'm sure you would love to connect with anybody that has questions, and we'll keep an eye out for your questions here today. So thanks so much for hanging out, Sabrina. It was fun chatting and soaking up all your wisdom about time.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Yeah, I appreciate it. And absolutely, if anyone has questions, I know sometimes there's like a specific struggle that you have or a certain area that you're like really having a hard time. And so, you know, feel free to message there and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And yeah, thanks again, Kelsey. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great chatting today. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.